Okay, welcome back again. I wanted, to try to go slow here, but at the same time, try to introduce you to something that I think I will be able to prove with you scientifically, and without any question, be able to reach a conclusion. Number one, all of the things that we have seen written, who wrote them, where did these people come from? And number two, how can we prove without a shadow of a doubt that when you meditate, something very natural yet very powerful, very scientifically accurate occurs? Because I myself, sometimes have sat in meditation, you're sitting here in the dark, and what is this? And however, I was able to finally break what I always have a challenge with myself, because I think there has to be a logical explanation. If all of these people for thousands of years are talking about meditation or going within yourself, for what? How can you do anything by just sitting there going inside of yourself? Well, I'll be able to show you without any question what happens. And the very same thing that occurs inside of you when this happens occurs in a laboratory presided over by scientists. So, there's actually proof. So who wrote these things so many thousands of years ago? Was the removal of Adam's rib actually the transferring of an electron from one atom to another, creating an ionic bond? We've showed you pictures on the overhead. That's what occurs when you remove an electron from this atom and it goes into this atom. This atom becomes a positive, this atom becomes a negative. Unless this happens, there can't be a union. The two can't become one. The two atoms become one when there's a transference of an electron from one to the other. So the positive and the negative occur, the male and the female occur, the yin and the yang occur by the transference of one electron from one atom to another atom. Well, that's a scientific thing, but that's what the Bible said, that there was a transference of a rib from Adam which made Eve, which would seem to be saying that indeed one thing moved from this atom to this atom, and it created an ionic bond. The two became one with a positive and a negative, in the same way that electricity is one, but there's a male or female or a positive and a negative. But that's the basis of all energy in the universe, and who knew that? How was it possible, if that's what's being said in the book, how is it possible that that was written in there? Who could have possibly known such a thing? And the tribe of Judah. The tribe of Judah is the tribe of light. If you have a Bible and you go to page 326 and you look at it, it says on page 326 in 2 Kings chapter 8, verse 19, page 326. Yet the Lord would not destroy Judah for David his servant's sake, as he promised him to give him always a light to his children. So the tribe of Judah is always preserved as the children of light, the tribe of light. Now if you look at page 115 in the Bible, you go to Numbers chapter 2, verse 9, it tells you the number of people in the camp of Judah. And the number of people in the camp of Judah is 186,400, which is the constant speed of light. That's a very significant scientific statement to make in a book that's written thousands of years ago. Who could possibly know that? Who could possibly know about the transference of electrons? Who could possibly know about the speed of light? And yet it's written thousands of years ago. Is that a coincidence? It could be in any other tribe, but this particular tribe, which is called the tribe of light, has 186,400 people, which is the constant speed of light. That's not a coincidence. But who knew that? You have, as we've gone over literally tens of 20 times, the temple. You have the outer room, you have the Holy of Holies, and you have the veil of the curtain. And in your brain, you have dura mater, which is the outer part of the brain. You have pia mater, which is the most sensitive inner part. And you have arachnoid, which is the web or the veil. And when you look in your stuff that I've given you about that web, keep that in mind. Because one of the amazing things that I have discovered is not only is there a web in your brain, which is arachnoid, it's there. There's a web in the universe, which is an electromagnetic web. And just think of this. When you touch an electron or a photon here on Earth, it goes right up that web. And a distant galaxy, a distant planet like Andromeda or Pegasus knows when that electron on Earth has been touched. I mean, this is a fact. This is an absolute fact. So you can imagine when you touch that electron or photon inside of yourself, and you're made, that's what you're made of, electron and photons out of atoms. When you touch one, say, how could I possibly touch one? And this is what I'll show you as we go down the road. You change, you touch, you move these things inside of you by simply observing. Once you look, they change. And I'll show you how that's done. And this is not something you have to have faith in. This is a scientific fact. Observation does it. And so who could have known, who could have described the temple as an anatomically correct description of the human brain? Who knew about an ionic bond of electrons, nuclear? Who knew about the speed of light? Who could possibly know that? And then Jesus said, if your eye be single, your body will fill with light. Well, the single eye is the pineal gland of the brain. And the pineal gland secretes a hormone called melatonin. Melatonin is a skin lightener, but not even anyone in this country knew what the pineal gland was until the 1940s. Melatonin was discovered in 1958 by Aaron Lerner and other researchers with him working at Yale University. And was previously known to cause the skin of amphibians, which like tadpoles, to lighten. So it's a skin lightener, and the single eye, the pineal gland of the brain, secretes a lightener, and the body says, if your eye be single, your body will fill with light. This is the way these things are written. These are the riddles. These are the myths that are the Bible. The Bible, what does Joseph Campbell say the Bible is? What is misunderstood mythology? Which it is, which makes it wonderful and accessible to everyone. And there's numerous things. There's numerous other things in the Bible, people flying off in fiery chariots. But somehow at the bottom of all of this writing is a magnificent mind. Writers who were thousands of years ahead of the time when they were writing. How could people write about atoms, about medicine, the cosmos, and all of these things which only recently Hubble has discovered? How could they write them thousands of years ago? There was no culture around that knew of this stuff. Nobody knew, nobody understood this stuff. Could it have been that the people who wrote these things came from someplace else? Could it have been that the people who were so advanced scientifically and were able to write in great symbols about these things came from another place in the universe? And I assume that, but I have to be able to prove that to you. So it's not good enough for me to say, well, yeah, that's what happened. I have to be able to prove it. How am I going to prove it? And even if as the religion tells us that the Bible's the words are inspired by God, could God trust the revelation of things deeply scientific and cosmic to people who were splitting rocks and selling sheep thousands of years ago? Sheep herders, and he's going to tell you about nuclear fission? Of course not. Would he send people would God send people as he had sent them in the past? In the past, they were called angels of light, which we know them as angles of light. Angles of light entering the pineal glands of mothers, taking residence in fetuses, growing up kind of in a normal way, and then finding their place. You come to a destination. You come to a place when you have a mission. I was born in a very normal way, I guess. I lived in a quote-unquote normal family. Well, you know, that's... I went to school sometimes. And I did most of the things that most kids did. Nothing was really different, but then something happened. A heavy something came upon me. You know what I used to do? I was a teenager. Everybody was out dancing to Johnny Ray. You remember Johnny Ray and the little white cloud that cried and all that stuff? You remember? And they were all dancing to this stuff. I was in dark rooms listening to Tchaikovsky and Beethoven and Wagner and Handel and all these things. And what the? And I would go into it, and I didn't know, and I couldn't stop it. And I'd get all of these weird things in my head, and I'm like, da 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 da. But I'd go nuts sitting in these dark rooms listening to this stuff. But I couldn't stop, you know. The louder it was, the better. I spent hours in darkness listening and never knew that the light was beginning to enter that would allow me to do what I had to do now. I never realized. I didn't come down out of a spaceship. But you come down from space. And then it starts, and then people started coming into my life. Like Joan was a perfect one. I mean, you know, she flowed right into this with me. She used to be out in the kitchen when I used to be in a dark room listening to these things, and I'd come out and I'd say, guess what I thought? She'd say, what? And I'd tell her some weird thing, you know. Oh, sounds good to me. And I look back to things. And now I think of where we've come from. Like what we've, over the last few weeks, as we've been going deep into the mythologies. Pegasus is a white seahorse. And then we found out that the hippocampus of the brain, the word hippocampus means, well, it doesn't mean white, but the word hippocampus means seahorse. And its color, according to Stedman's, is white. It's a white seahorse. Now just think of something. If the electron or the atom is stimulated in the hippocampus by observation, does it then vibrate the web to the web in the universe to Pegasus? And does the vibration of the electron in Pegasus come down the web to your web to the hippocampus? You see, let me just tell you what so you get an idea of what I'm talking about. This is a fact, what I'm about to tell you. This doesn't require your faith. This is the way it happens. Atoms, photons, electrons, which are inside of you. In a laboratory, they start off as particles, like a dot. That's the way. When they're transmitted, they start off as a particle. When they travel as a wave. Okay? As soon as somebody looks at them, the wave collapses, they become a dot, they become a particle. Just by looking at them. And what's so interesting about this is that people such as Niels Bohr and Stephen Hawking, Niels Bohr said, then the reason that these waves collapse on the Earth is because the universe is looking at them. And then Stephen, you ever see Stephen Hawking? He's very much disabled in a little wheelchair, and he has to speak through a computer. And Stephen Hawking said, what is making me think now is that the reason that the waves in the universe collapse is because somebody is looking at them from outside of the universe. But the reason that the waves inside of your brain collapse happens when you meditate and you look at them. As soon as you observe them, they change from a wave to a particle. That is the key to why meditation works. You dispatch an electron or a photon by observing it. It travels as a wave, and as soon as somebody observes, you could actually dispatch an electron or a photon or an atom from your brain as a wave. That does not mean that that's going to go over there. Or that thing may go to Mars. It goes wherever it wants to go. And if somebody at Mars happens to pay attention and start looking, they'll see it. It'll collapse right there. There is a logical way that you can get an electron, a photon from your brain to somebody else's by you dispatching by observation within yourself, and that person by observing within themselves and receiving. It actually works. And it not only happens inside of your head, it happens in the universe, and it happens outside of the universe. And so we find all of this stuff, and we start to find then that here we have got the same thing inside of our heads. We have a white seahorse, which is the place of memory. We have Pegasus, which is the white seahorse. And then what else did we find out? We found out that Pegasus, with his hoof, tripped the fountain, which is the place of memory of the Muses. And the Muses who lived on the mountain of Apollo had a mother whose name was Mnemosyne, or something like that. But the important thing is, she is the goddess of memory, which is the hippocampus. And we found out also that they lived on Mount Helicon, and the word helicon means spiral, which is the activity that rises up the spine to the hippocampus. All of these things we found in mythology. All of these things, the place of memory is the hippocampus, which is Pegasus. You reach it in your meditation by the spiral energy of Kundalini, which is Mount Helicon. And it restores to you memory, which is the Muses, Mnemosyne. All these things written in mythology. Where did this all start? I mean, who knew this? Who put this together? I will tell you something. Well, let me tell you. Who intervened into the mind of whoever called this the hippocampus and had this thing in your brain called the hippocampus, which is the thing that gives you memory? Who knew that? Who called it the hippocampus, which means it's the white seahorse, which connects it to Pegasus, who is connected to memory through the Muses and the spine? Who knew that? And then, who knew that when they wrote in the Bible that Christ would come back on a white horse, they called Christ Amen, and in the center of the hippocampus is an organ called Amon's horn, which is the same as Amen. So of course he comes back on a white horse, because he comes back in memory on this, in the hippocampus of the brain. Who knew that? I have felt a fire inside of me ever since we learned of 45-55. I had a strong feeling that the people who wrote these strange things came from 45-55, which is a galaxy. It's a galaxy in the constellation Coma, which is mother and child. Do you remember when we received the Coptic key? It was done in a strange way. Each person came here, received a white envelope with the key in it. It was done to impress the overall importance of what was being revealed. And the key contained the symbol of 8, which is right here. That was considered to be fulfilled by the discovery of the 8 planets at the time. The next part of the key was the word Azozio. Remember that? A-Z-O-Z-E-O, which we found out was light filtered by crystal. Well, light filtered by crystal is electromagnetic radiation that comes down from above. Light coming from through crystal compounds in the universe to impact the human brain. Angles of light bringing new understanding. Azozio. The third part of the key was 45-55, the number. Debbie Sibilia checked it out with the planetarium and found out that it was a galaxy in the constellation Coma, which is mother and child. Why was that number given? What did it mean? Who put it there? And all those people who knew of ionic bonds, nuclear fission, the speed of light, pineal, melatonin, the brain, anatomy, angles of light, where did this come from? Is it inspired by God? But by who and how? How is it done? And not only was 4555 found in the Coptic key, but in Daniel. Would you come up and get out overhead number 1? When in the book of Daniel, do you remember what we showed you in the book of Daniel? In the book of Daniel, the hand that did not have an arm attached to it, it came and it wrote on the board. It wrote M-E-N-E, Mene, Mene. In fact, is Rich? Rich, okay, Rich found this. Rich Stopler. But it wrote M-E-N-E, okay? And if you look at this, you find out what? E has a value of 5, okay? Let's see if we can find M. You want to raise it up? There's M, right there. Has a value of 40. So M, E, 5, and E, 5. Now we need N. There's N, 50. There's the number again, 4555. And this is in the book of Daniel. That's it, John. Thank you. Yeah, just stay there if you would. Yeah, I'm going to show that. Just stay there if you would for a minute. So not only was 4555 found in the Coptic key, and it was, and then the book of Daniel, and as I've just shown you, it's in Daniel chapter 5, verse 25. But you remember, I used to manage the cable system in Brick Township, New Jersey, and I did for 22 years. And last year, I had a big job in making sure that all of their towers that were over 200 feet were registered with the Federal Aeronautics Administration. And as I was reviewing all of them, one of the engineers, I'll tell you his name was Dick Snyder. He came up to me with the registration of the one that I had managed for 20 years in Bricktown. And he says, you were the manager in Bricktown for 20 years. You want to look at their registration, their FAA registration? I said, yeah. I looked at it. Would you get number 54 out of there? I looked at it, and I wanted to show it to you. So this is the registration from the Federal Aeronautics Administration of the tower, of the television tower that I managed for 22 years. That's Crosswicks Cable, Point Pleasant Beach. And here it says, you want to lift that up, John? Okay, 200 feet guide tower, so forth, several antennas mounted to tour for reception of signals to be used, cable TV system. And then it says tower will be located in Bricktown, New Jersey, in a 12-acre property site on Burnt Tavern Road. Okay? You got that? Here is the latitude, 45, 55. Can you see it? This is coincidence? I wind up in the only place on the earth with this tower sitting at 45, 55? Where signals are coming in on this tower that looks like this, but all of the signals are coming down, and where is it located? 45, 55. And this is an FAA document. All right? So, thank you, John. That's
those signals are going boom.
okay, but I didn't know at that time, you know. Oh. So let's look at this. The Coptic key of 4555 originated from the Coptic Gnostics of Egypt. C-O-P-T-I-C, Gnostic, T-I-C of Egypt. Okay? That word Gnostic means knowledge. It is the source of when you go to the doctor and you say, I'd like you to make a diagnosis. And he says, well, I've got the diagnosis. Now you say, okay, so what is the prognosis? You know, so that's what it means, knowledge. But you know, I saw something interesting here. In looking at the Coptic key in the material I gave you, if you have it with you, and if you look at the page 95 of that material, there's something, Albert, that struck me as soon as I looked at it. And what I found was that the Coptic Gnostic Book of IEOU, the Coptic key from Egypt, was written in Greek. Wasn't written in Egyptian. It's written in Greek. The whole thing is written in Greek. Yet, thousands of years ago, who were these people? They wrote the Bible. The Bible was written in Greek. And even the Old Testament, because the Jews who lived in Alexandria at the time this was all written had even forgotten what the language of Judaism was. All they knew was Greek. Because they lived in Alexandria, which was a place called, it was Hellenistic, which Greek, it was a Greek part of Egypt. They wrote the myths. You remember last couple of weeks we talked about, who did we talk about? Charon. Charon, the little gray man with the short coat that takes you across the river Styx. Well, that's a myth.
Is there a metaphysical difference between the G and the K in knowledge?
I don't know. You have to look that one up. Let me know.
We're worth investigating.
Okay. But you know, when we looked at the fact that Charon takes you across the river Styx to Hades, and the planets, Hades is Pluto. And surrounding the planet Pluto is a satellite. And its color is gray. And its name is Charon. And he is the little gray man with the little short coat that beckons you and says, you want to go for a ride? And you say, yes. Because you got to get past Hades to get to Elysium. But he says, let me see what you got. Anyhow, I have looked at this Greek group, whoever these people were. They wrote the myths which seems to flow from the knowledge of anatomy and astronomy. Their words fill Stedman's Medical Dictionary. They measured the angles and trajectories of the heavenly bodies. I've never been able to justify in my mind how these people called Greeks of thousands of years ago knew what they knew. Who the heck told them this stuff? Who told Democritus in Greece about the atom? He's the first guy to discuss the atom and electrons. Who the heck told him? Surrounded by people selling sheep and catching fish, yet they were teaching philosophy, medicine, astronomy, anatomy, mathematics, and on and on and on and on. And then there was this crazy guy named Pythagoras, the father of mathematics. He said, I'll tell you something else. They said, what else, Pith? He said, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. They said, where'd you get that from? You know what he said? The planets. What? It's the sounds of the planets. How did he know? You're going to call him a nut? He's the father of mathematics? The father of music? The father of harmony? He's a nut? He said, oh yeah, it is. And you know what else Pythagoras said? You know how I know? They said, how, Pith? He said, because I have lived before. And I have been given the ability to remember where I was before. Oh yes, you can look this up. Because one of the Pythagorean doctrines is the doctrine of transmigration, moving from one place to another. Pythagoras, who gave you 2 and 2 are 4, and do, re, mi, fa, sol. I mean, even in fundamental churches, they sing do, re, mi, fa, sol. And you know what else they do? Do you know one of the gods that Pythagoras came up with? Because he was into music, too. Her name, she is the goddess of sacred music. You know what her name is? Polyhymnia. That's her name. So the next time they say, well, you shouldn't get into that damn stupid cult stuff of mythology, say, why do you sing hymns in church? Because Polyhymnia is the goddess of music, and that's why you do. So how did all of these brilliant minds wind up in the same area, bringing the very foundation of Western civilization to us on a plate? How is it possible? I've been on the trail of 45, 55 and the Coptic Key, so I had to return to Egypt. Because you remember when we taught this, Albert, we said that 45, 55 came from the Coptic Gnostics of Egypt. It was the Egyptians. But they weren't the smart ones. These guys that were hanging out in these Greek places were really the smart guys. Something gave me a pause. Do you have 105 that Joan gave you? Something gave me a pause, and I had to stop and look, and I studied the Coptic Key. And when I saw it was in Greek, and then I saw, and if I looked at the Coptic Key, which is on page 95 yourself, the 12 emanations and the 3 watchers, and I thought of the 12 titans and the 3 cyclops. Given through the Coptics in Egypt, but written in Greek, could that be the explanation of this strange group of people who came together and then disappeared, but before disappearing, they left civilization with the basis for all scientific and philosophical truth? Could they be from 45, 55? And are they the ones we are expecting and waiting to return? And who are they? Aeschines, orator, Aeschylus, dramatist, Aesop, fabulist, Alcibiades, politician, Anacreon, poet, Anaxagoras, philosopher, Anaximander, philosopher, Antiphon, speechwriter, Apollonius, mathematician, Archimedes, mathematician, Aristophanes, dramatist, Aristotle, ever hear of him? Philosopher, Athenius, scholar, Caligarius, architect, Callimachus, poet, Cratinus, comic drama, Democritus, philosopher. He expounded on the theory of the atom. Demosthenes, orator, Diodorus, historian, Diogenes, philosopher, ever heard of him? Dionysius, historian, I know you've heard of him. Empedocles, philosopher. Mauricus, dramatist. Epictetus, philosopher. Epicurus, philosopher. Aristophanes, scientist. Euclid, mathematician. Euripides, dramatist. Galen, physician. Heraclides, philosopher. Herodotus, historian. Hesiod, poet. Hippocrates, physician. Not only physician, astrologer. And not only a physician and astrologer, but every doctor has to raise his hand and take the Hippocratic Oath. Homer, poet. Socrates, orator, dramatist. Phidias, sculptor. Pindar, poet. Plato, philosopher. Did you ever hear of him? Plutarch, biographer. Polybius, historian. Prolexus, sculptor. Pythagoras, philosopher, mathematician. Sappho, poet. Simonides, poet. Socrates, philosopher. Did you hear of him? Solon, statesman. Sophocles, dramatist. Strabo, geographer. Thales, philosopher. Themistocles, politician. Theocritus, poet. Theosophists, philosopher. Timon, philosopher. Xenophon, historian. Zeno, philosopher. Do you know something? Let me show you how wild this is. Do you know one of the most quoted people of the ancient times in books on quantum science today? And I mean all of the books of quantum science written by Niels Bohr, Gary Zukav, all of these books you pick up, a guy named Zeno. Look at the very last name on the hit list, Zeno. And look, if you would, at the bottom of page 105. This is the same guy. This comes from a book called Taking the Quantum Leap by Fred Allen. And it's called Zeno and Moving Things. Zeno lived in Elea. And think he did although often overlooked in typical course. Zeno was the forerunner of the modern theoretical physicist. The job of theoretical physicist is to make observations. If we are unsuccessful in doing so, we are to point out that something is askew in our understanding of these observations. In short, we earn our money either way. Either we show how to understand an observation that was previously not understood, or we tactfully point out that we have been mistaken. Zeno fulfilled the second role of the theoretical physicist very well. He pointed out to his fellow scholastics that their heads were filled with beans. He used logical argument, a newfound tool of thinking, to prove that motion is impossible. Who the heck taught him? And now this guy's work is in all of the quantum physics books of 1998. Zeno. I mean, who taught Zeno? Who taught all of these people? Where did they come from? How can we look at this rationally? I mean, if there was a guy in Africa and another guy in the United States and another guy in Paraguay, but these guys were all living in the same neighborhood. They're all hanging around with one another. Plato opens a school. He calls it an academy. You know who one of his students was? Aristotle. How could this possibly be? I am saying that these were angles of light who, as particles of light, entered into the fetuses of human women, and as they grew, they regained their direction and were moved to the place where they all came together and provided us with the instructions for our life. Just bear with me for a minute here. And let's look at these. Just look at three of these people real quick. Pythagoras, Aristotle, and Plato. Pythagoras was the father of mathematics. He gave us the musical scale. He said the notes were the sounds of the planets. Pythagoreans who followed him believed in immortality and the transmigration of the soul. Teleportation, which we have seen in Innsbruck, Austria. Surely the father of music and mathematics that provided everything that you have in mathematics and everything that you have in music, you can't consider to be a kook. Yet as brilliant as he was, he claimed to have been a person named Euphorbus, a warrior in the Trojan War, and he said that he had been permitted to bring into his earthly experience memory of all his previous experiences. So he claimed to have existed in another state before his present life. The father of mathematics, music, and harmony, as we know it, remembered previous incarnations. Who out there is going to argue with this guy? I mean, this guy lived 1,000 years before this Bible was even ever written. Aristotle. His writings on the nature, scope, and properties of being were called by Aristotle first philosophy. But you know what title they were given when the book was published? Metaphysics. Metaphysics, Aristotle. Aristotle is the father of metaphysics, and the word metaphysics means the branch of philosophy that examines the nature of reality, including the relationship between mind and matter. Aristotle. The very things we discuss today, the very things that are referred to as New Age, were developed by Aristotle. Plato. Plato sought through metaphysics the investigation of ultimate reality. In other words, reason properly used results in intellectual insights that are certain. Reason properly used results in intellectual insights that are certain. This is what Plato said. Quote, this is Plato. Like, you can't quote Jesus. I mean, this guy wrote this. Plato said this. Reason. The objects of these rational insights are the abiding universal, the eternal forms or substances that constitute the real world. The real world, the subatomic, the unseen thing. See, when you and I went to church, we were only told that what we saw was real. We didn't realize that that was a small part, that actually what we saw was made by what we couldn't see, the subatomic. the quantum. Okay. You got the roll of honor of these guys. You got to admit, they lived, they existed, they were doing all of this neat stuff while everybody else was chopping rocks and selling fish and herding sheep. So this is a special group here. Who the heck were they? Who told them all of this stuff? You got one of these guys, Democritus, sitting around 2,000 years before the Bible is writing, expounding on the theory of the atom and electrons. The Coptic Gnostics of Egypt gave us the Coptic key, which we have 8, Azozio, and 4555. We found 4555 in the book of Daniel on the wall, the guy with no arm, and we find out that it's a galaxy in the constellation Coma. So now I want you to listen carefully, and then I'll let you go. Next week we'll get to the point of I'll prove to you what happens when you meditate. Prove it. I'll prove it to you so that you can take to everybody and say, here is scientific proof that this is the way it works. The Coptic Gnostic school of Egypt that gave you 4555, thousands of years ago, in a book called IEOU, that school was located in Alexandria, Egypt. Alexandria was where the great library stood, which was eventually destroyed. But here is the evidence of who these people were and where they came from. The Coptic Gnostic school in Alexandria, Egypt. Alexandria was the major city of what was called Hellenistic Egypt. Hellenistic means Greek. The residents of Alexandria at that time were Greek. The language was Greek. These guys, the Zenos, the Aristotles, the Platos, the Pythagoras, these guys. The word Coptic is a Greek word spelled in English, Q-U-B-T. It means Egyptian. Egyptian. The brilliant minds of Greece who gave us medicine, science, philosophy, also gave us 4555. And this is why I believe they are the ones that we are waiting for now. That they are the ones who came from 4555 and provided us with the very foundation of civilization. Okay? Now, the school in Alexandria, Egypt, the Coptic Gnostic school of Alexandria, Egypt, was headed by Clement of Alexandria. Clement's name was spelled C-L-E-M-E-N-T, but his real name was Titus Flavius of Greece. He is the one who gave us 4555. When Clement left the school, the Coptic school in Alexandria, he was replaced by Origen. And Origen is the father of Greek theology. That's where 4555 came from. That's where the Coptic key came from. 4555 given out of the blue by these people who knew everything that nobody else on the planet Earth knew. They came, they gave it to us as the basis of our civilization, and then when the Roman hordes came, they left just as quickly. Who were they? I think now we know. And I think there's a good explanation of where they come from, why they came here. And remember something. You have been taught as a child that the Word of God is the Bible. That is not what the Greeks called this. The Greeks called it the Logos. And the one thing Logos does not mean is word. Logos can never be translated word. Logos means a Socrates philosophy, the principle governing the cosmos. The source of this principle, or human reasoning about the cosmos, the rational principle of the cosmos. And the word cosmos, which was a Greek word, means the universe regarded as an orderly, harmonious whole. Harmony as distinct from chaos. So logos is the principle governing the cosmos, and the cosmos is the universe as an orderly, harmonious whole. We have not understood that. And instead we consider the logos as a book that has been changed by people over thousands and thousands of years. So, just think if this makes sense to you. If it makes sense to you that these people, and you have their names, came together, lived and taught in one place at a remote period of time before the Bible is even written, laid the foundation for civilization in anatomy, astronomy, mathematics, harmony, philosophy, and then in the middle of it all told us a secret number, 4555, which happens to be a galaxy in the constellation Coma, which is mother and child. And remember, in the Bible, it says, "Behold, the Lord will give a sign. A virgin shall conceive." 4555, given by the Greeks to you at the back of the book, where they listed everything that we know and accept as civilization.